This is Just Press Pause, episode 5. I'm Andrew Kozak. Thanks so much for listening or watching if you're watching on YouTube. Today's episode, the principle of it all, is all about education, how it's been affected by COVID-19, and how one of the top schools in the country, public schools, is dealing with the pandemic. And of course, we're also going to talk about how graduating seniors are being affected as well, because obviously their world has been turned upside down with all the social distancing and the lockdown. We're going to be talking about that with somebody who has been an educator for the last couple of decades, and he's going to join me as today's guest. We'll have water cooler weather coming up in just a minute, but a quick side note, normally I try to get these episodes edited quickly and then put on all the channels, whether it's Deezer, whether it's Google Podcasts, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and of course it takes me just a little bit longer to edit for YouTube. This week has been a little busy though. My number one job is meteorologist, and for Spectrum News 1, which covers the entire state of Ohio, we've been really busy. Not only have we had tornado warnings and watches, a confirmed tornado a little earlier this week in Columbus, but we've had flash flood warnings pretty much for the entire state as well. Major system, keeping me busy, working from the studio, working from home. And that's why this episode has taken just a little bit longer to post, but glad we're finally doing it now. All right, we're going to start your water cooler weather right now, keeping with the topic of education. One of the top questions that I get whenever I go to do a school talk or a community event or even just some questions and answers on Instagram is, how does somebody become a TV meteorologist? Is there a special school you go to, a certification program? Is somebody there forecasting and you just go and play one on TV like an actor? These are all good questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how somebody can become a TV meteorologist. I'll talk a little bit about my path, and there are several other paths that people can take. Well, first and foremost, it starts with college. If you're going to go the route of obtaining a meteorology degree, then you've got to find a school that, of course, has one. For me, I went to Oneonta State University, or SUNY Oneonta, part of the New York State University college system. It was a small school up between Albany and Binghamton in upstate New York, public school, of course. What really turned me on about it, though, is that their meteorology program was really nice and small. So by the time I was a junior or senior in those 300 and 400 level classes, I was only with a handful of other kids, and all of our goals were to either be a meteorologist for television or in the private sector. And there are plenty of jobs in the private sector, of course. So that was the first thing you have to do. If you don't go that route, you can go and get an undergraduate degree in atmospheric sciences or something science related, and then go to a school like Mississippi State University, which offers certification programs for TV meteorology. And there's a lot of successful TV meteorologists that have gone through Mississippi State. I believe they also have an online program as well. One of the most important things for me was conquering math. And I like math. It was just very difficult. So I had to take several terms of calculus, 1, 2, and 3, differential equations. And these are all things that actually play a big part of the meteorological process when it comes to modeling and data. So it really was important to get that under my belt. The other thing that's important pretty much for anybody that wants to be a meteorologist is during the education process, during the college program, you want to make sure that you get an internship in the place that you would want to potentially work. It doesn't have to be the actual place, but it has to be in the field. So for me, it was finding a television station. Now, I went to school in upstate New York, but in the summertime when I was back home in Staten Island with my parents, I would constantly be watching all the TV channels since I was a kid, really, watching all the meteorologists that I grew up watching. One of them was Sam Champion over at Channel 7, WABC, who is still there now. He left for GMA, he left and went to the Weather Channel, and now he's back doing mornings, Monday through Friday, on Good Morning, the morning show there, WABC Morning News. So I just called. One day, I called in the middle of my junior year and said, I'd like to speak to an internship coordinator. Sure. Had a quick phone interview with them. And just a few weeks later, I had my letter that I was going to be starting an internship. And working with Sam was fantastic. It wasn't just him. It was Frank and Lori and Karen, these graphic artists that worked with WABC to create all the news graphics that you see. Well, they were also helping to create graphics on the computers, the early versions of which I use today, WSI or the Weather Company. Those are the graphics that you see on television. So I learned graphics. Sam made me go and write down every single word that I was going to say in a mock weathercast. And at first I'm like, this is busy work. But it was great because I went through and I crossed out the words that I thought weren't going to be helpful to me. And then I went and I practiced just like anything else. And I got myself a tape. Now that was back in 2003, to date myself a bit. my resume tape, my first one that I used at WABC, was on one of those super VHS cassettes, which I can't even find a player for anymore, but I still have the tape in my basement somewhere. And that was the most important thing. Of course, the coursework was great. That's where I really got the in-depth meteorological knowledge. But it was my internship at Channel 7 that really helped me form who I am today. Of course, my first couple of jobs, I was not very good on the air, but it just helped me to get that green screen or that big screen experience. Of course, I wasn't on the air at Channel 7 as an internship, but I did practice quite a bit off air, dinner breaks, things like that. So once you get that internship, once you get a mock weathercast, and then you get your degree, you just got to keep sending that out. Now, back in 2003, I basically was sending out VHS tapes. That was before YouTube. Of course, we had the internet, but everybody was still sending their resume reels on VHS tapes. And I wasn't sending it to markets like Columbus. I wasn't sending it to big cities. I was sending it to Sioux City, Iowa, or Billings, Montana, or Casper, Wyoming. And it turned out Casper, Wyoming was the first callback, and they offered me a Monday through Friday job. Of course, by this time, I was on my way to graduating college, had the internship under my belt. I signed my contract in May of 2003, and 6 days after graduating, I was out in Wyoming beginning my career. And ever since then, it's just been a steady move. And right now, I'm pretty much where I want to be, very close to my family, not far at all, 45-minute plane ride, great market, great station, love of Columbus. So this is where I'm going to stay put for a while, but that's how you kind of do it. You've got to start off with an internship, and then you've got to start off in that small market. But the education, what you get behind your belt when it comes to science and math, that is very, very important. And very few people right now on television in 2020 are just talking heads. There may be a couple of markets where people might not have a meteorology degree, and there might be somebody else forecasting for them, and then they just go on and they're just a pretty face. But really, in this day and age, most people, if not all people that are now just getting into television meteorology, are actual meteorologists themselves. So next time somebody wonders about what it takes to be a meteorologist, remember the two most important things: the education in meteorology, and perhaps even more important than that, the internship itself. So there's a little bit about my background and a little bit about the education. And now, of course, continuing that note, let's get to today's guest.
You're listening to the Just Press Pause podcast with Andrew Kozak.
He is the principal of one of the most highly ranked schools in the country, consistently applauded for its use of technology and robotics and learning, and lauded for its 100% graduation rate and college admission rate. His enthusiasm and love for learning, in addition to his philosophy of service above self, well, it's proposed Staten Island Technical High School to levels perhaps not quite ever imagined, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. Mark Erlenwein, thank you so much for joining me today on Just Press Pause.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Andrew. It's really, really great to be with you here today. Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's so good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Now, full disclosure, I graduated from Staten Island Technical High School. I went there from 96 to 2000. You were not the principal then, but you were definitely working there and kind of rising through the ranks.
Right. At the time, I think you and I originally met when I was doing Russian language tutoring.
That's right.
On the side, before I had a full-time job there as a chemistry teacher. And then I think on your way out, that's when I got my first job there in 1997.
Yeah.
When I first started a substitute job there. And you graduated which year again, Andrew?
I graduated in 2000. I feel like you were full-time that last year. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So full-time for the first year that last year when our paths would cross on a daily basis. Yes.
It's been, I want to say it's come a long way, but it's not like it was not a great school then, but it just seems like in the last couple of years, and I think I told you this when we talked about doing this interview on the phone, I would be sitting at the anchor desk on television in different markets, Wichita, Tulsa, Memphis, Tennessee, and they would be doing the high school rankings. And Staten Island Tech was always something that was near or very at the top of the very of all those lists, of all those competitive high school lists. That's got to be such a proud thing to be the principal of a school consistently highly ranked.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, year after year after year, in 2005, once we became a specialized high school, and becoming a specialized high school basically meant students from all 5 boroughs in New York City could take a special test to gain admissions to our school. So although we're Staten Island Tech, we have students from Brooklyn, Manhattan, Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island, of course. And due to the caliper and the really, I mean, the student base, just such an amazing group of young men and women, and our faculty combined year after year doing better and better in college admissions, SAT scores, AP exams. Yeah, see, these are some of the things and the metrics that the companies that do the ranking use to determine those rankings. And what was becoming true each and every year is that we were performing at a very high level, and our rankings would continue to go up. And the more those rankings would continue to go up and we'd appear on those lists, these are rankings that are published all over the world. So we were quickly getting people from Egypt, Asia, Japan on a regular basis reaching out to me, trying to find out what our admissions policy is, how can they come to our school, and some of them actually achieving that, figuring out how to do that, come to New York City, take the test over the summer during that last admission, and gain entry.
A lot of people that I talk to about the school, a lot of people that read it may not realize it. It is a public school. The children, the kids that go there, they don't pay anything, but there is obviously an admissions test.
Right. I like to always call it's the best private school, which is a public school. We have that private school feel, 1,330 students, but we have figured out a way to keep it really personal and keep that small school feel intact. Going to a college and career preparatory high school like ours, with an emphasis on the grades, has its positives and its negatives. So several years ago, we switched from numerical grades to letter grades, which really changed the dynamic between the communication of how student progress, what it looks like, and what it really means amongst the students, the teachers, and the parents. And since then, I've kind of just made it, well, you know what? It's not about the numbers anymore. It's not about the numbers. It's not about the ranking. So while we celebrate the rankings when they come out, I try to make a point not to make mention of it. Kind of walk the walk and speak true to the heart that that's not what it's really about. It's a wonderful thing for an admissions standpoint when students are interested in our school. I'll talk about it, but in keeping true to the mantra of the building, where what matters is learning and not the grades. And I try not to make it a focal point, although it's one of the first things that comes up in a conversation.
What makes Staten Island Tech, as far as the programs go, so different than most high schools, not only in New York City, New York State, but across the country?
Well, I mean, we're always known as a STEM school, right? So long before STEM was called STEM. And now I really look at our school as a STEAM institution that's really thriving on innovation. I always talk about imagination, innovation. We had a world-renowned robotics program for about 19 years at our school. And that was through the first robotics program. Really the best way to kind of encompass what our school is all about. We're college and career minded, but we're trying to create, the Imagineers, the creators of tomorrow, the helpers, the problem solvers, the business leaders who are going to really, in a world that's, on life support right now, really help us get over that hump and into.
And it really sets, and it just sets so many of the kids apart. I mean, I look at even the class that I graduated with, and the amount of people that have gone on to careers in the sciences, in mathematics, in art. I mean, my class itself has doctors, engineers. My brother's an alumni of the school, and he used all of his knowledge to become an engineer. He lives out in Long Island. It's pretty incredible what you have and where you're ranking. I know it's not about the ranks, but it just propels, like you said, so many people from not only the United States, but around the world to send you guys messages.
Well, I think from the standpoint of New York City, we're one of the 8 specialized high schools. So there are other schools like ours, right? That there's a specialized test to get into. I think what sets us apart and makes us different is our focus on, we really work very carefully and closely with the colleges, but more so our career partners, industry experts that are telling us what is needed in the workforce from our students to really prepare them for the next job, because the next job is not going to be in an office. The next job may seem, eerily familiar to what we're doing right now. Home-based offices, a skills-based society, and economics based upon skills versus the traditional jobs that many of us went to school for to learn.
Right.
So due to that, because of that, and we were very lucky, with this pandemic that hit us seemingly so suddenly, but for some of us, we saw it coming. We pivoted 7 years ago and went one-to-one. So every student had an iPad, going back 7 years. And then a couple of years later, we switched over to bring your own device. Once we realized that students really wanted to personalize and pick the device that they wanted. So we hired a work-based learning coordinator named Jennifer Fitzpatrick, who over the past couple of years, we created this curriculum called Introduction to Technology. So not introduction to technology. The technology is really kind of the vice that was leading to the issue of this breakdown of communications between students and adults too. So every ninth grader now takes this Introduction to Technology class, which aims at teaching these interpersonal skills and how to use technology more effectively. So as we were kind of having this inner guilt about and struggle with like, what do we need to do as a school to fix this? Because these computers and these devices are the future.
Right.
It's how our youth engage and communicate, but it's also become this hindrance for the social emotional, the interpersonal skills,
It almost makes
making
you,
eye contact.
and it makes you feel like
Yeah.
it should be something that's taught in all schools, because I
Right.
mean almost everybody right now, and not just because of the pandemic, but even before that, I mean everybody's just connected. I have my phone not in front of me, it's on the table next to me, and that's the furthest away it's been from me all day. It's just the way that we are kind of now ingrained in our technology. So when you teach something like that, and you said the ninth graders are the ones that are dealing or learning, that seems like it's kind of preparing a nice base for the future as they not only go through the high school but go into college and beyond.
Yeah, I mean it's quite an interesting curriculum. Every student takes it once a week in the ninth grade,
Mhm.
and it literally it's based upon an oracy curriculum in School 21 in Great Britain, the UK,
Mhm.
and the whole entire schools, the foundation of the school is built upon an oracy curriculum that teaching students at a very young age in kindergarten all the way through high school how to talk effectively. There's a physical aspect of it. There's a social emotional aspect of it. There's a linguistic aspect of talking effectively. Um, Going into this world, not being able to communicate effectively. Um, I don't care how smart you are, how talented you are. Being an effective communicator
Yep.
is going to be the
It's the biggest hindrance, I
key
think.
ingredient.
It's the
Yeah,
biggest hindrance when it comes to. I mean, look, I current TV station withheld because this is the best place I've ever worked. In case anybody's watching, thank you. But even being in a communication business myself, I've had past experiences where communication was like the last thing on the people's agenda, even people who
right.
work in that business. And I just think it's a skill that, it's great that the next generation and the future, of our society is starting to learn that now. It almost feels like some adults need to go back and probably take classes like that, because everything's changed so much just in the last, I want to say decade, but it's really been even more so probably in the last 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, and just the degradation of skills, soft skills
Yeah.
that normally called soft skills, and they're the hardest skills to learn. We continually bring in people. There's a gentleman named Bob Wolf who created the Hope Skills, and Bob is a soft skills trainer, and he doesn't like to be referred to that as a soft skills trainer, but he calls them human interaction skills. Um, but just seeing how much that they have kind of fallen to the side when you interact with kids, when you say hello to somebody in the hallway and they're barely making eye contact with you.
Right.
It's funny. We've spent time teaching students how to shake hands properly. I guess now we're going to
It's
be
going to say
teaching them how to do
scratch. Yeah. Let's do the elbow. Let's scratch the handshaking for a
elbow
bit.
bumps properly.
Yeah.
I don't know what the new norm is going to be, but then we'll have to retweak that part of the curriculum.
You've got two people, and I know this from, I've lived all over the country, interviewed for multiple jobs, and I'm in a highly competitive field. So many of the alumni from Staten Island Tech go into highly competitive fields, and you're going to have multiple people, multiple candidates for a job with the same skill set, each having something to give to the company that they'll be an asset for, but it's going to be that skill of how to communicate, how to interview, even
Right.
on that basic level, that's going to separate the people that are going to get the jobs
Absolutely.
from not. It's so important.
Absolutely.
It's so important. And that's great to see that you guys are doing that. So you're not only, when I was there, everybody's, oh, you're doing robotics, you're doing, it's a computer school. It's so much more than that. It's evolved, it seems, into just basically a school
Right.
that's getting the kids ready for the future, probably more so than so many other places right now.
And that's always been the trick of it. Our students are leaving anywhere from, you can graduate with 30 to 60 college credits if
Yeah.
you really want to. No problem. You can go to some of the best schools. Once again, no problem if that's what you really want. That's why kids come to our school. 51% of our students are going into field in STEM, STEM, medicine, and business, finance, education, more and more into the arts and the media arts, actually. Um, but really, I mean, they're going against a global, the competition's a global
It's
one,
fierce. It's
and
very fierce, especially
it's
right
very
now.
fierce.
Yeah.
So, we made a huge pivot to institute a college level, I would say even as a professional level career development center in our building, where over the past couple of years, we've employed 52% of each school year's class of students, nearly half of the students in paid internships,
Wow.
giving them the opportunity to try out or hone a skill that they're not good at or want to sharpen in a work setting. Or try a field that you think that you want to major in college, which is going to cost you a lot of money,
Right.
and really explore if this is in your heart what you really want to do for the rest of your life.
And so when I went there, it was, I mean, you had a lot of these amazing programs. I mean, I learned how to put circuits together. I did mechanical drawing. I did just so many different things that maybe, you wouldn't be doing in a regular high school, that you'd only be doing in a specialized high school. I want to say I visited maybe 2 years ago, somewhere in that time. I was still living in Memphis, and I went on a little tour of the school, and it was just amazing, the different programs that they have now, competing on national levels, international
Yeah.
levels. I follow you on Facebook. I follow Staten Island Tech on social media. You guys are doing it's like a morning sort of, it's like almost like a little news program in the morning, getting the kids ready for what's going on throughout the day. So it's not just, okay, teachers, you're going to dial in, you're going to teach your lessons, kids are done, do the homework, repeat the next day. You guys are just doing this all encompassing program that's pretty much taking the classroom into everybody's home.
Right. It's the trick of it, and there's the irony in all this. You take us back 4 or 5 months, we were scratching our heads about social media. Take us at the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic right now, and social media is what's keeping us together. So, up until this point, I'm usually, when we're operating the school in the school, I'm very much behind the scenes. The student's voice is very prominent. But once that all disappeared and we are operating from our homes, we really needed to pivot and utilize all of our tools and our creativity in recreating a school culture that was virtual. So that meant me being a bit more in front of the screen more often, and trying to deliver messages in a creative way. A lot of infographics, a lot of mini videos, nighttime live Facebook streams, bringing the PTA on, our parent coordinator, our coordinator of student activities. We're going to be doing another program sometime this week in the next couple of weeks for our incoming ninth graders. So the pivot's been strong and consistent, and it's a combination of myself and a lot of other people helping create content and putting it out there. That's very informative. But ultimately, there's one landing page on our school website that has all the information that everyone knows that they can go to. And I encourage them, use social media as just kind of your place to tune in on what the messages were for the day, what are the latest updates, and try to put an entertaining flair to it once in a while.
Does the day begin the same amount of time or the same hours that the day would normally begin in school? So there is that flexibility there for the students, and I would think for the teachers as well,
Yeah,
in the way
yeah,
that they do things. So I do want to ask you about graduation, because this has been a very sore subject for kids, teachers, schools all across the country, and really probably the world. What are you guys doing as far as graduation goes? And for anybody, by the way, that's before we answer that, May is usually the time for graduation in a large portion of the country, especially in the places where I've lived. But in New York, the school year begins in September, it ends in June. So you guys still have a little over a month left of the school year.
There's no secret that all of the schools are looking into a virtual commencement. It doesn't seem as though we're going to be able to come together live and in person anytime soon. And I don't think it's fair to wait until July or August and hope that that's going to happen in light of the New York pause being extended into June. So we have to make decisions because the school's fiscal year is coming to a close. And putting together a commencement is one thing all to itself. Putting together a virtual commencement is something we've never, no one's ever done before at the high school level. So we're honing in on a vendor and honing in on what the format's going to look like and what are the extra special things that we can do to give our students, the best and proper send off.
Right.
So yeah, so
I mean,
that's yeah.
even if it's virtual, it's still important that they get recognized. And I'm sure with everything going on, from the teachers to the parents, the students, everybody is pretty aware of the limitations, but also, probably grateful that there is going to be a lot of time and effort put into making it as good virtually as they can.
Yeah, no, and the students, the parents, and the caregivers have been incredibly grateful and gracious about what this has been so far. The remote learning, they seem to be very happy and pleased with how it's going, and the feedback's been great. So, and we make modifications based upon their feedback. But they've been really understanding of the scenario and the situation, and likewise, that's been mutual.
Yeah.
That goes both ways because as impacted as the students and the parents and the caregivers are, the faculty and the staff are equally as impacted. I mean, day by day, there's there's a victory and then there's a heart-wrenching story.
Yeah.
And they go side by side within moments sometimes.
So I have a lot of teacher friends all across the country. I have some friends that are assistant principals that may want to be a principal one day. What advice can you give other educators who are in the situation that we're all in right now in how to best use the technology, use their their love for teaching to best get through this time?
Wow, I mean, I think the best advice going into this, I kept on telling everybody, some people in their minds were, okay, let's take the whole entire schedule and put it out every day for the kids. And let's do it synchronously. At 9 o'clock, every student's going to tune into this time, and we're all going to be on the screen together. And we've always just approached this from day one, being very realistic about the fact that we need to be flexible. And you don't go from the norm was one building with all of our kids in it learning, and now you have 1,330 individual buildings. So to think you're going to do that synchronously, I think would be the first mistake, at least for now. This is kind of like emergency remote learning.
Yeah.
In the long run, if we're going to build this out, I anticipate that down the road, we're all going to have plans as a school to flick the switch at any given moment. Where today we're live and in person, tomorrow we're going to be remote, and all of our operations are going to have to continue to go.
This is the new norm. We are
Yeah.
most likely going to go back to a new version of what we think normal is. I mean, it's pretty inevitable at this point.
Right. So, I mean, my advice is to really be open-minded into figuring out how you can run your school remotely and in person. Because that's what I've been obsessing and thinking about and working on for the past year.
As soon as you think you've gotten through everything on the list, you're going to have more questions again. I mean, it's just so it's really trial by fire, but you guys have the tools and you guys have the support and you have an excellent staff, obviously excellent student body and their parents and support. So you guys are going to be most likely in better shape to move forward, moving into the future now that you've kind of laid out so much of the groundwork and you had that, that thinking already in place. I got two questions that I do want to get to from people that are listening.
Sure.
First one is, why does your high school, meaning, of course, Staten Island Tech, give Russian as a language option and not the typical Italian, French, and Spanish?
Okay, so the short answer is so Staten Island Tech was created between 1985 and 1989. So end of the Cold War, and when creating the curriculum for our school, yeah, in a great sense, we were a pre-engineering school. That's kind of what we are. We're a pre-engineering STEM school, and very much so. Russian was the language of engineering coming out of the Cold War, if you think about it. And so when we were creating the curriculum for our school, is that what can make it unique? What can give our students an edge going out into college? Even back then, when we were just basically the thought process of a school, knowing that the two mega powers in the world, the United States and Russia, that was really, if you've watched the news at any given time during that age, the idea of perestroika, Gorbachev, and President Reagan, like all those characters and those people, those historic figures who ushered us out of the Cold War. As simple as that, the idea was to pick a language that was going to make sense and have longevity and give our students a really unique experience. So that was always in our school's charter from day one. So here we are 30 some odd years later, and I would argue that learning how to speak Russian really serves our students quite as well today as it did back then.
I had another question. Now, this one came to me from an email, and I'm thinking it's somebody that goes to tech or went to tech, because they said, I don't want to have my name mentioned, but they said, do you still watch The Simpsons, and do you think it has degraded in quality? Now, I remember, by the way, I think before you answer this, if I remember correctly, you ran a Simpsons club, right? When you were a teacher, wasn't it
Yes.
called the Stonecutters?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so I do remember that.
Yeah, so going back to 1997, one of the students approached me about being the advisor for the Simpsons Club. And, two simple goals of watching that each week: order pizza, watch cartoons, The Simpsons, and enjoy them in each other's company. So, yeah, that is still true. I now it's great. Because of the Disney Channel, we have all episodes of The Simpsons, and my family and I, and my son particularly, absolutely loves all of these episodes. He loves watching some of the old ones, and some of them don't make sense to him.
Right.
And
I mean, some of the references.
I
mean, half of there's a ton of guest stars that were so relevant, and this is how long the show's been going on.
Right.
That either are no longer alive, no longer relevant. There's a lot of inside jokes.
I find it hard now following along with the newer episodes.
Right.
I don't understand all of the pop cultural references, whereas back then, growing up in the era I did, it made complete sense to me.
I mean, there's been references to pop culture in the late 80s and early 90s, and kids, anybody that was born even when you were doing the Stonecutters Club at Tech may not get it. It's amazing. You probably didn't think all those years ago, hey, and in the year 2020, this will still be a show that's on television making new episodes. It's pretty amazing.
No, it's incredible that it still remains, and it really producing as high a level and so intellectual, message on a weekly basis is just unthinkable.
Yeah, there's definitely a debate about the quality, but I will say that there's a lot of stuff on TV that still to this day doesn't even measure up to new Simpsons, let alone the classic stuff.
No, totally agree.
Mark, listen, thank you so much for joining me here on Just Press Pause. Just a little insight into how your school, and again, one of the top schools in I want to say New York, but really in the nation, is handling this COVID-19. Hopefully things go back to a level of normal that is a little bit more comfortable for us. But it is nice to know for the students and the teachers and the parents that if this is a new norm for a while, or if a version of this becomes a new norm for a while, you guys are so prepared, so ready for the future, and will not skip a beat when it comes to getting students ready for that next step in life.
Yeah, that's our commitment. And Andrew, I thank you for having me on today. It's been such a pleasure to see you and have a chance to talk to your audience on this medium. Absolutely. So great to see you.
Absolutely,
so proud
Mark.
of you too.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. You have a safe one, and best to you and your family.
Likewise.
That's a wrap on episode 5 of Just Press Pause. Thank you so much to Principal Mark Erlenwein of Staten Island Technical High School for joining me for today. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe there at the bottom right of the video, or join me at youtube.com/AndrewKozakTV. This podcast can be listened to on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Deezer, and just about a half a dozen others. Any questions, complaints, comments, or concerns, you could find me on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter at Andrew Kozak TV. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.